Macy Chiasson versus Marion Reneau. We got minus 210 on Chiasson and plus 175 on Reneau. And it seems like the line is slowly moving towards Reneau's side. We had minus 240 originally on Macy Chiasson, and now we're seeing a little bit of love come in on Reneau. Let's start off with Chiasson. Obviously, she won the Ultimate Fighter, I believe it was season 28. It goes on to beat Patty Kianzad in the finals to notch that victory there and bring home the Ultimate Fighter title, or whatever they want to call it, award. And since then, she's gone on a 3-1 streak, losing to Lena Landsberg in there just before her last fight, where she took on Shanna Young on relatively short notice. She did replace, if I'm not mistaken, it was Nico Montano. Shanna Young comes in on super short notice. Again, she's a 125er coming up to 135, and it definitely showed in that fight against Chiasson. We saw Chiasson get close to 8.5 minutes of control time in that fight and did not let Shanna Young breathe at all. Like, she just pushed her up against the cage, she bullied her, she used her strength, her size, and that's what she does in the majority of her fights. Like, outside of the Gina Mazzani fight where she just was, bombing on her and eventually landed a beautiful shot to put her down, her Patty Kianzad fight, her Sarah Moras fight, Lena Landsberg fight, at least in that first round, and then obviously the majority of that Shanna Young fight, we see her go out there and just push her opponents up against the cage. There's instances where, like, her opponent will, like, dig an underhook, turn her, and try to get out of the way, but Macy Chiasson just drives all the way through, and it looks like sometimes she's just going to spear her opponent through the actual cage, and it's insane. It just goes to show how much power and strength and muscle that she uses in those situations. And then you see when she's not able to get her opponents out of there, especially in that fight against Lena Landsberg, that it starts to wear on her a little bit. Like, her cardio starts to catch up to her, and that's where we saw Lena really start to turn things around in that second and third round and getting control time of her own. If I'm not mistaken, we saw Lena Landsberg notch just close to 8 minutes of control time there. The majority of them, 7 minutes and 45 seconds to be exact. But the majority of it coming in the second and third rounds when, we saw Chiasson really start to slow down. Chiasson had 4.5 minutes of control time against Lena Landsberg in that first round. So it definitely wore on her. And I think her win conditions are pretty much predicated on her going out there and get the finish over her opponents. And that's where I think things get a little bit crazy. Macy Chiasson comes into the Ultimate Fighter. I think she was only 2-0 or 3-0, and then gets into the UFC with a 3-0 or 4-0 record. Very green for sure. Even on the regional scene, she went, I believe, 4-2. She still seems a little bit uncomfortable on the feet. She definitely has power in her hands, but the majority of her wins come from her just like out muscling her opponents, and she's able to get the finish sometimes. Again, Sarah Moras a little bit overextends herself at times. She did get the takedown right off the bat, but then eventually got reversed, and then we saw Chiasson really start to rain on her with her strengths in that second round to get that KO. Gina Mazzani knocks her out in about 2 minutes. Patty Kianzad close to getting submitted in that fight, just in the Sarah Moras fight. I believe it was the Moras fight where we saw right at the ending of that first round that she was in a bit of a pickle in terms of Moras having a pretty decent armbar on her. She was lucky that she had the cage there, and also that the time was expiring in that first round. But I'd be interested to see how it looked if it was Marion Reneau there, and two, if they were in a slightly better position. Again, we saw Patty Kianzad get in on some arm bars herself as well too, and we saw Chiasson get out of there. I was very impressed with how we saw Kianzad finish Penny. She got her back, and then she traps her arm, so it allows for more opportunity for her to get around her neck, and that's exactly what she did, how she ended up getting the rear naked choke. But man, I just see some flaws in her game. Like, at first I'm like, okay, she's a bright prospect, she's 29 years old, she still has time to really flesh out. She trains at Fortis MMA. You guys know I have a hard on for Fortis, but she still shows some rawness and some greenness in her game. And even though Marion Reneau is 43, approaching 44 in June, she still shows that she can still go out there and have some solid fights. Like, she's on a 3-fight losing streak right now, but that third round against Yana Kunitskaya was just one-way traffic. Like, she was absolutely busting her up and beating her up. And if this fight does get extended, again, we've never seen Marion Reneau finished in her, I believe it's 16 fights. She's never been finished. So her durability is definitely still there, and she's putting in the work. Like, she still looks in great shape. in her last fight against Raquel Pennington, we saw Pennington put on a solid performance from pillar to post in terms of striking, mixed in with clinching. She did a good job in terms of just clinch fucking Marion Reneau. But the difference here between Pennington and Chiasson is Chiasson pretty much just goes out there and tries to clinch fuck the entire fight. And that's what starts to burn her muscles and starts to burn her cardio. Whereas Raquel Pennington, we saw she mixed in some solid combinations, some good striking, some good takedown attempts, and then clinching. And then she was able to kind of clinch and control that fight in that third round. I do want to try to get the numbers here from the Pennington fight. Yeah, Pennington controlled her for 5.5 minutes. And that third round, we saw her control for about 2 minutes there. So nearly half the round. But that was, that was on the back end of her having a complete, mixed martial arts matchup. And that's where I think it gets a little bit difficult for Chiasson. If she's not able to get her opponents out of there, things get very, very fishy for her. And I think in that third round, things could get fishy as well, too. Out of the 9 wins that Marion Reneau has, 4 of them have come in either in the second round or the third round by finish. I think most notably, her last one was against Sarah McMahon, and that was actually her last win. That was in the second round. But before that, she beats Toledo Bernardo in the third round. And then even 2 fights before that, she beats Milana Dudieva in round 3 via ground and pound too. So I think Reneau's live here. And I'm super stunned to say that, especially for like a 43-year-old fighter. But Chiasson still makes some mistakes in that Shanna Young fight. Like, she's heavily overextending herself to try to implement her grappling game, her clinch game. Again, she's much bigger. She's fighting a woman that's technically a weight class below her. And there were instances where she's trying to get her down and just kind of, overextends. And we see Shanna Young kind of not totally capitalize, but get into positions where she could potentially take her back. And Reneau, being a black belt herself too, I think she could take advantage of those positions. Now, the spot that I'm looking at is I'm hoping and waiting that we see Marion Reneau become a bigger dog. The trend right now is that the line is closing a little bit more, but I'd like to see, I think we'll also see some people going out there and betting Macy Chiasson as this fight week goes on. And if we get that plus 200 on Reneau, I might have to take a little bit of a shot there. And I'm talking about like a 0.5 unit stab, because I still think that Chiasson is going to be the stronger one. She could have her success in the clinch, but it depends on what type of game plan she brings. Is she just going to go out there and just try to outpower Reneau for 3 rounds? Because then it gets fishy in that third round. We've seen Reneau come back from fights before where she's down and she comes back and has a very strong third round. The spots that I'm looking at, Reneau via sub plus 625. Reneau round 3, I think, is plus 1900. I think those are going to be some solid spots here, given that Chiasson doesn't really show the best of her skills in that third round, especially if she's just heavy on the clinch, heavy on the out-muscling her opponents, and just grinding her opponents up against the cage. So I could definitely see Reneau taking advantage of those certain situations, but it all depends on how Chiasson really approaches this fight. And I don't know about you guys, but again, Chiasson just doesn't look the most comfortable in the striking situations. Like, she throws good power, but her shots are a little bit winging and they're a little bit wide. I think Reneau could definitely take advantage of those spots too. It's just the strength, it's the youth, and that clinch situation, as Chiasson does have some very nasty knees, and she's very persistent with it too. Like, her output is solid, but again, the later fights get, the more fishy it gets. And I think that this is a spot where Reneau could potentially take advantage in those later rounds. So if this fight reaches that third round, the live odds might be absolutely crazy for Reneau to win it. And I wouldn't mind taking a little bit of a shot there. But if we also see Reneau reach plus 200, I might have to, probably forcing my hand here. I absolutely see the finish where Chiasson just grinds on her, but I think that she just exerts too much energy in those situations. She's still young in her career, so maybe she's making some improvements and trying to round out her game. But Reneau, she started in the game late too. She started when she was 33 years old. She's 43 now, so she's been around for 10 years. But out of all the competitions that she's gone up against, she's never been finished, which is very impressive to me. So yeah, I can't believe I'm saying it. I like Marion Reneau here, and I think she pulls off a third round submission victory. Those props are definitely something I'll be chasing this for this coming event. But I might make a small play on Reneau here, depending on what the odds shake out to be as fight week goes. And I can see people just parlaying Macy Chiasson just because she's a solid favorite and seemingly on paper should go out there and beat a girl like Reneau. But Reneau's a dog, man. She's been in some wars. She's been in some tough fights, and it doesn't seem like Chiasson is that good of a nail, but she's a damn good hammer for sure. So if she can get Reneau out of there in those first 2 rounds, I think she'll be okay. However, if this fight does end up going into that third round and we see, a solid amount of control time for Chiasson in those first 2 rounds, that third round is going to be very, very fishy. So I'll go with Reneau, third round submission. Call me crazy, but I'm doing it. I think she has a solid spot. So I'll wait for that plus 200. I think we'll get it. But yeah, those props as well. Sub plus 625 and round 3 plus 1950, I think is a solid spot for Reneau. So once again, I'll go Marion Reneau to win this fight via third round submission.